Yes, it is true. I'm feeling pretty silly at this moment. I've cut some lavender from my sister's garden and I thought I'd do a follow-up video to the one I posted a couple of years ago, answering the questions that had been left underneath the comments section of that video, and also those that have been privately emailed to me. The problem was, life got in the way, and you'll have to watch on to the end of the video as I show you what went wrong. Hello there and welcome to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Julie from Julie Davis Flower Workshops and Flower Start, the online flower arranging classes. I've got 3 great tips for you if you're thinking of picking some lavender to dry, either as cut flowers or to use the little flowers in lavender bags. The first thing you need to think about is why you're cutting your lavender. If you're just cutting your lavender bushes back because it's got to that time of the year when they're straggly and you want to deadhead them and make them into nice compact balls again, that isn't the best time to be picking lavender to dry as a cut flower or to use in your crafts. But it is really good for the bees. So if you're a wildlife gardener, go ahead and do what you're doing, but just don't expect to be able to crop your lavender so you can use it. If you're not cutting back your lavender just because it needs trimming back and you want to use it as cut flowers, or perhaps you're going to go into production and making loads and loads of lavender bags, well, I would suggest that you cut your flowers much earlier in the season. So I've cut these flowers when they are showing some colour, but the flowers themselves aren't quite open. They're just on the verge of bursting open. They'll be perfect for dried flowers, and in fact, my dried lavender, it must be 2 or 3 years old by now, not this one, the one I've got in my workshop. And if you want to use the, if you want to be making lavender bags, you'll either collect lots of the little heads as you bundle your lavender up, or you might want to leave it a little bit slightly longer, again not in with your flowers in full bloom because they will just shatter and fall apart. But I've certainly got a whole sort of bowl of lavender heads which I may well keep because of my disaster in filming this video. I feel I do need to salvage something. So if you want to do a mix of all 3, you probably want to cut your lavender early stage to dry, leave it a week or so to cut for lavender bags, and then leave it until it needs deadheading and your lavender bushes need reshaping if you're thinking more mindfully of the birds and the bees, well, I should say the bees and the pollinators, and all good things that come with wildlife gardening.
I thought you might like to see some of the bees buzzing around my sister's lavender. We've done each other a favour this year. She knows that I like collecting lavender to dry and to use in my flower arranging projects, and she also was mindful of the fact that the lavender, which flanks her sunken path up to her front door, is getting in the way of everybody who wants to go to her front door and drop off her post and her online deliveries. And you can see here that she's been sort of gathering up the lavender by putting that piece of string in, trying to stop it flopping over the path. So one sunny lunchtime I went over to her house, got my scissors out and used my brand new flower tote. I will leave a link to that in the cards up above and in the show notes under the video. It was a really, really handy carrying bag. So you can see me here, hands and knees, doing a quick gardening job for her, but actually secretly really pleased that I was getting all this free lavender rather than having to go out to a lavender farm and pay for it commercially or to buy it locally. Pride becomes before a fall, eh? This is probably a good opportunity to tell you that I'm filming this video as part of the Sunday Funday challenge, which is hosted by Yanni and Diane at Deco Easy and the Crafting Cousins. I'll leave details of their channels in the show notes underneath this video. I'll also leave a link to the playlist so you can see what everyone else who's been taking part in the challenge has been up to this week.
I can't remember where I've put my scissors, and then I thought, I know where they are. A few years ago I posted a video here on YouTube about how to dry lavender, and over the time I get various messages on comments underneath the video or direct messages to email asking questions. I thought now the time has come when perhaps I ought to do a follow-up video. and if you're interested in watching that first video, I'll make sure I put it and the cards up above, and I will try and remember to link it in the show notes underneath the video as well. So one of the questions I've had is that one of the ladies who was drying her lavender found that it had gone musty within the first couple of days, and why is that? I'm trying to decide whether my lavender smells musty. I actually picked it about 5 days ago, and I've had it hanging up in this little flower tote on a peg rail in my kitchen, and that's not ideal. Really, I should have put these into smaller bundles and hung them up with lots of airflow so they could dry without rotting off. But one of the reasons why you might get a little musty smell is because, of course, this is a fresh cut flower that we're trying to dry. So of course we want to preserve the flower heads, but we get all the little bits of green, the little bits of leaf on the other end of the stem, which are just going to die and shrivel off. So it may well be that mustiness is the natural greenery and leaves of the lavender, which are shrivelling and starting to die. And I've never actually had that problem before, but if you have had that problem, I would say lots of these things, flower arranging and drying your own flowers and looking after flowers, is just trial and error. So perhaps not to make too big a bundle, so that if your bundle does spoil, it doesn't spoil the whole crop that you were trying to dry. And perhaps sort of nice sort of hand-sized amounts of lavender to dry, and to always hang it up when you've got lots of air flowing around and out of direct sunshine. So I probably wouldn't advise that you put this in your sunny south-facing kitchen window or in a garden shed, something like that. Something that's a little bit cooler and a little bit darker. I knew they were somewhere. I bundled them up with my flowers when I cut them for my sister's front garden. Now another question I've had is, when should you cut your lavender? Well, I like cutting mine quite early in the season when the flower buds are just thinking of coming out. If you try and dry your lavender at the same time that you're cutting back your lavender bushes just to keep them under control as a normal good gardening practice, you've probably left it too late to actually dry the stems, because really you were cutting back the lavender bush in order to make it into nice round balls for next year, rather than thinking with your cropping head on if you're going to want to cut the lavender to dry as a dried flower, or whether you want to harvest it for making lavender bags. Now, I have had a question about what about keeping the lavender heads on the bushes for the bees, and of course that's another factor to consider. So it may well be that you, if you're like me and you want to cut your lavender to dry, I cut mine quite early on in the season. If you're wanting to cut your lavender to use the flower heads as lavender bags, you might want to delay a little bit longer. And of course, if you're gardening with bees and pollination in mind, you'll want to have the flower heads on your stems of lavender for as long as possible. So you'll probably be keeping them on your stems until the flowers have gone over, and then doing that more of that gardening chop back and just putting your flower stems on the compost heap afterwards. Another question I had was whether you should be using a preserving spray. Well, I've never sprayed my flowers with anything. I have heard people using hairspray to keep their dried flowers in place. It acts like a little bit of a glue and holds things in place. But I've never felt the need to spray my dried lavender with anything. And if you're concerned that your flower heads are falling apart, that's probably an indication that you're cutting it too late in the season, and think about cutting it a little bit earlier than you would do normally. As you can see, I've had a bit of a disaster. I thought I was going to set aside some time to bundle up my lavender and dry it, and then life just took over, and when I've opened up the bundle, it's all started to go mouldy, because it was, although freshly picked, obviously there's a slight bit of dampness to the flower. I've had it in my cotton tote, but there just wasn't that airflow going round. So it looks like this is spoiled, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to salvage any of it, which is a right old pain. I was lulled into a false sense of security that all these heads here
which were hanging out of the front of my tote wrap, were in the fresh air with the air circulating, and everything else that was wrapped up was just, not in the fresh air, and it was just sitting there stagnating. So I don't know whether I'm going to be able to save any of this. There might be a few stems from the outer edges, but it looks to me as if this is a one-way trip to the compost heap. So that's all from me for the moment. I hope, despite the disaster with my mouldy lavender, that you have gained something from this video, even if it's do as I say and not do as I do. So do give it a thumbs up. Do keep the comments coming with your hints and tips, and indeed what you do with your lavender. It's one thing drying it, but what actually you're going to do with it. So I'm always looking for inspiration. So do share with me what you like doing with your lavender. I have also got a video on making lavender bottles, which is the way of enclosing your lavender heads in their natural stems and using those to scent your drawers. That sounds like your knickers, doesn't it? And use them as sort of alternatives to lavender bags to keep your clothes fresh and smelling beautiful. That's all from me for now, and I'll see you next time. Do you want to see the leftover flower heads? I'll get them for you. I can't tip this bowl too far forwards, but these were just the scrapings that I got off my kitchen worktop. So I will have to pick out the longer stems, and I will then be left with a lovely bowl of jewel-like lavender heads, which will dry out over time. At the moment, they've still got a lovely scent, but they are just a little bit moist. So you never know, I may well make lavender bags. Be a great gift for Christmas. Anyway, I hope you have more success than me, and I look forward to hearing your lavender tales.